Good afternoon, everyone. My name's Ponsford. I'm from the Qatar Computing Research Institute, and I'm a senior scientist there. Qatar Computing Research Institute is part of the Qatar Foundation, and we are a research organisation. So we don't really get involved in sales. We don't really get involved in markets as such. Me, just like all the other scientists, our lives are pretty much devoted to looking at technology, investigating technology, and developing technology. And my particular area of interest is cloud computing. Okay. What we're going to talk about today is, of course, cloud computing. And I want to cover the technical, economic, and environmental considerations when moving to the cloud. And I want to give a couple of examples as well that I'm familiar with in terms of cloud adoption. First of all, I know you've heard it many times already during this conference. I just want to give my own personal definition of cloud computing. And it's a very, very simple definition. And what I mean by cloud computing is, in my view, is infinitely scalable, shared computing resources available on demand via the internet, where a user is charged only for what they use. And of course, cloud, as you've heard many times before, is split into two areas: public cloud, which is made available to the general public, and private clouds, which are used within businesses. Now, if a company comes along and they says, I'm going to put all of my servers in a data center, and maybe I'm going to virtualize them, that does not mean to say that you're using a private cloud. A good example of a private cloud is what the UK government is looking at doing. They currently have 500 data centres, pretty much one or two for each government department, all over the UK. What they're going to do is they're going to migrate the workloads from all of those into 12 regional data centres. And each of those government departments is going to pay for the computing resources that they use on those clouds. That is a private cloud. So just moving your servers to a data centre is not a private cloud. So what are the advantages of cloud computing? It's highly scalable. It's on demand. You get enterprise quality computing resources. There's no requirement to employ data center staff, so that means that the skills within your business do not have to contain those enterprise level people that are used to building data centers. There's no capital outlay. There's rapid access to resources. And what's really great is it allows entrepreneurs to build and test new ideas without the need to invest in infrastructure, skills, or setup expertise. Who's involved today? The main players, a good example would be Amazon Web Services, Microsoft Azure, Google, and a host of smaller, localized organizations all developing their own cloud offerings. Now, in my view, the reality of cloud computing as it stands today is that it's actually not that cheap. A lot of people will talk about saving lots and lots of money by moving to the cloud, but that's not always the case. If you know exactly what you need to do, if you know that your solution is going to run on 2 dedicated servers, and you know that those servers are going to deliver all of your needs, moving it to the cloud could cost 3 times as much as buying the infrastructure that you actually need and running it. So why would you actually use the cloud? Also, it's not very fast. And I'll give an example here of our own tests on Amazon EC2. If you need fast disk access, don't use the cloud today. In our tests, we've shown that the average read-write in the Amazon cloud is around about 18 megabytes per second. If you go and buy a brand new server with some nice SAS disks, you're probably going to get 400 megabytes per second. So if you've got applications that need very, very fast read and writes to disk, the cloud, in most cases, is not suitable today, particularly the public cloud offerings. It's also really, really difficult to estimate what it's going to cost. Because in the cloud, you're charged per RAM hour, you're charged for inputs, outputs, you're charged for bandwidth use in and out, you're charged for disk access. There are so many different things that you're charged for. The elements all seem really small, but they can mount up and they can end up being really expensive. There's a whole industry that's just being created around trying to estimate what it's going to cost to run your applications in the cloud. The other big problem of cloud computing at the moment is there are I say there's no here in the presentation. There are lots of efforts, I would say, of people trying to put standards together for cloud computing. But today there are very few open standards. Also, another big problem with the cloud is migrating. Say you're with Amazon today and you want to be with Microsoft tomorrow. It's very difficult to take your application and migrate it from one cloud to another. So what we really need to do is try and avoid vendor lock-in. So where is it a good fit? Now, my example here is actually an old example, but it's one of my favourites. And it goes back to 2008. I'm sure most people here are familiar with the online community of LinkedIn, where business professionals can come together and connect. And you're probably familiar as well with a tendency in the US for people to put jokes on the back of their cars, to put bumper stickers on. So when you sat in the traffic and you sat behind someone, you've got a joke that someone else can read in the car behind you, which they may or may not find funny. Back in 2008, some engineers at LinkedIn, what they wanted to do was test their skills in developing a cloud-based application. They really wanted to see if they could build something which was highly scalable. And they built it on a technology called Ruby on Rails. And what they did was they created a bumper sticker application. And what that allowed you to do was to go to your Facebook profile and add a bumper sticker to your Facebook profile. Very, very simple application, but really what they were doing was testing scalability. They had no idea how popular this application was going to be, but they wanted to make it as scalable as possible. They used a cloud provider at the time called Joinet, actually generally a very highly respected US-based cloud provider. And what this application was very, very successful. In the first 46 days of this application being released, remember all it was doing was adding a bumper sticker to your Facebook profile, they had 1 million users. Within about a year, they reached 13.5 million installations. And at its height, it was getting 1 billion page views per month. Now, what was really, really interesting about this is they had no idea. They didn't know how much the demand was going to be. If you were building an application a couple of years ago and you were going to release it on the web, what you didn't want is for too many people to try and access it and to pull it down. But you also didn't want to invest too much in hardware or software. So if you went along to a normal hosting provider, they might have signed you up for a 1 or a 3 year contract and they said, how many servers do you want? What if you think you're going to be busier? Maybe you should buy 20, maybe you should buy 30 servers, and you'd be stuck into a contract maybe for between 1 and 3 years. What happened here is they started off with 2 servers. At its height, they went to 12. You can still use the bumper sticker application, and it's back down to running on two servers. They only paid for what they used. So this was highly scalable and very, very cost effective. So really the moral of this example is, when is cloud computing good? And in my view, cloud computing is really great when you don't know. If you've got lots and lots of business unknowns, how popular is my idea going to be? How successful am I going to be? Then the cloud is perfect, because there's very, very little investment required. If your application is really, really popular and it's scalable, brilliant, because hopefully you're going to generate revenue from that and you can afford all the cloud hosting fees, etc. If it's not successful, well, you haven't spent a lot on infrastructure, so it's ideal. What it also means as well, because years ago I was a CTO of a company, and what we always used to do when we built our infrastructure is we used to over-provision. We used to think, what's the worst case? And we used to always go and buy servers with as much RAM as possible, as many processors as possible, and we never got to use it. When we buy storage, we'll say, how much storage are we going to be using in 3 years' time? So we'd buy X terabytes of data, and it would take us 3 or 4 years to fill it. And that's a lot of wastage. So with cloud computing, you don't need to over-provision. So you only need to pay for what you're using at that point in time, which is great as well. However, having said all of this about cloud computing, if your requirements level out, just like now with that LinkedIn bumper sticker application, if you know it's only going to use 2 servers, and it's going to use 2 servers forevermore, there's probably no point in keeping it on a cloud infrastructure anymore. Going and buying 2 dedicated servers, put them on a 3-year contract with unlimited bandwidth, etc., is likely to cost you less than running in the cloud, because there is a cost to this scalability. There's one other aspect I haven't touched yet, which is the environment. Cloud computing gives us a real opportunity to be greener and to improve utilisation. There's just one last final thought. So Vivek Kundra, you may have heard of him, is the US Federal Chief Information Officer. Last year there was a big study that was done amongst all of the data centres within the US. There's 1,200 data centres that run government services there. The study found that the utilisation of those data centres was around 7% on average. So they're 93% underutilised. In my view, that's criminal. All of those servers, all that infrastructure, all that power being wasted and very little utilisation. By the way, the industry average for utilisation of servers is somewhere between about 15 and 20%. What cloud can do, if planned properly, is allow us to get much better utilisation of that hardware. Google achieves more than 50% utilisation. Amazon has a similar record. And this does result in significant energy savings and is of significant benefit to the environment. Thank you very much.